Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Alissa Sklar. I am the VP of Marketing for GIS Planning, and we are delighted to welcome you here today to our webinar on 10 things you need to know about lead generation for economic development. And with that, I would like to welcome my colleague Stevie Field-Chavez here today, and also Amber Hunter and Davor Davidovic. Am I pronouncing your name right, Davor?
Yes, you are.
Excellent. Well, welcome, Stevie and Amber and Davor. We are very happy to have you here with us today.
Hello.
Thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Yes, hello.
So, and we also want to, of course, thank all of our many attendees. This has turned out to be one of our most popular sessions this season, so we're really thrilled to have you here with us. We appreciate you taking time out of your busy day. I am going to pass some things over to my my colleagues here, but before I do, I just want to say a couple things about lead generation. Actually, we're gonna come back a little bit to that at the end. I think maybe let's start off for me passing this over to you, Amber. Let's make you guys the presenter, and you can start off with your presentations. Maybe give us a little bit more information about what it is that you guys do at Research Consultants International to start us off.
Yeah, certainly. So basically, Research Consultants International, FDI Inc. is a Montreal-based economic development and lead generation company, obviously headquartered in Montreal. We have offices worldwide. Our sister company is a company called LabTech that is headquartered in London as well as Hong Kong. Their primary focus is lead generation in Asia as well as the Middle East. Today, what we're going to cover, basically, our topic is going to be conversation methodology and investor meetings. So, Alissa, can you just tell us if everybody's able to see our screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. Excellent, excellent. So, Amber and I will basically take about 20 to 30 minutes of your time to talk about some of the best practices in lead generation. As sure you guys know, the first introductory meeting, whether it's generated through your consultant or your site selector or partner company, whatever the case may be, is only the first step of your lead engagement, if you will. Our statistics show that it takes the same number of attempts to get that follow-up meeting as it does to get that first meeting. Part of our suite of services also includes in-market representation, whereby we assume the role of that economic developer and we generate, nurture, and lead that potential investment until the company is ultimately, ready to invest and or expand to the region. So, as mentioned, these are some of our internal best practices to get that follow-up meeting. So it's all about. Ultimately, it's all about that approach. The approach that we like to assume is the consultancy approach. Obviously, we are consultants, but also doing those meetings as a consultant. So we're going to go into those details in a few moments. And we also provide the same economic development training during which we also cover the same topic, just ultimately in more detail. So just to look over the agenda very, very quickly. So we're going to present some of the background information. So, what does it take to understand the company's growth trajectory prior to the meeting via secondary research? Very often, consultancies such as ours are going to provide you with a meeting profile or a company profile. So it's not just about, necessarily reading that profile, but it's also doing additional research on the company as well as the contact. So that's under background information or framework information. So the next step is the meeting strategy. So establishing high-level meeting objectives. Ultimately, again, what are you trying to get out of that meeting? Conversation methodology. Overview of how to best position the region to attract the potential investment. We're going to look into some measurable data. So preparing benchmarking information on yourself as well as the competing regions, if that is named in the meeting profile. Investor meetings, how to do them, how to carry out a strategic conversation, and obviously overview our best practices. And later on, follow-up strategy, meaning forming an actionable plan. something that you can, work with after that meeting is completed. So without further ado, Amber.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So my name is Amber Hunter, and I am the Vice President of Business Development for the North American market here at Research Consultants International. And as Davor so eloquently put, we're going to walk you through sort of the first phases of having that first conversation with a company. So in this kind of analogy, we're presuming that you've set the meeting up, whether through a consultant or on your own regard, and you're going to meet with them. And one of our best practices, what we've seen and had the strongest outcomes in terms of projects leading up to being shortlisted, is this is what we do. So we just want to show you what has worked best for us. So what we like to advocate for the first meeting is really focusing on the relationship building aspect. A lot of clients or EDOs sometimes go in with their pitch deck ready to just discuss the region and highlight the region, which is great. But I think initially what the focus should be is on explaining to the investors that you've done your homework, that you understand who they are, you understand their company, you understand the reasons for their growth, and then focusing it and tying it into your region. So there's a couple of steps that we like to highlight for you to do for your background information, and this is information you need to uncover before you even sit down with the investor. So for one, there is just preparing staple background information on the company, such as what is their business strategy, operating structure, major issues. There are a ton of online tools that you can utilize to get this information. Some of the ones that we use are Hover's, Capital IQ, Ibis World. These can give you great detailed information on the company so that you walk in showing that you've done your homework and that you have an interest in their business model. Another key step that should try not to be neglected is contact research. Actually, we've found that lawyer firms, for instance, have a really big take on this, and it's a part of their marketing campaign. Before they have meetings with prospects, they do up to 3-page research papers on the people that they're meeting. So they understand their kids, the universities that they went to, the languages they speak. They have all of that information tied down so that when they walk in there, they already have an understanding of the person that they're meeting so that they can show that they've done their homework and done that extra step to convey their interest in that project and in that person, making them feel as though that meeting is the most crucial thing on the agenda for the year. Whether it be or not, you want to convey that type of feeling. Second, of course, is understanding the expansion drivers. Why is this company growing? What are the different drivers? Is it resources? Is it efficiency? Are there product launchings? Just showing that you've gone over and beyond to understand why that company is growing will again pivot you as someone that's there to be a resource to them rather than just a business developer, as you will, explaining your region. Then it would be good to do a package highlighting your regional assets, but in having that attached to the company's operating structure. So not just an overview of what your region has to offer, but how it ties into what the company's operating structure is and how those regional assets can add to their supply chain or to their value prop. So if we move down here and we look at the meeting strategy, so these are actionable items. So you come in, you've done your homework, you know who you're talking to, you know why they're growing, and you know what your regional assets are that can be complementary to the factors that are making them expand. So you want to go in and have that strategy. You want to have actionable items ready to outline which are your value propositions, but you also really want to understand what their concerns are. You want to establish from the offset what it is that is their barriers to entry or any issues that they foresee. So at this point, you're really coming in as an advisor. You're going in with a listening mode. You're still not diving into your pitch yet. You're asserting yourself as a sort of consultant. I mean, the reality is for a lot of these major companies, they have advisors that they pay to do a lot of this uncovering for them. So you want to come in and step in and show, before even discussing your community, you want to show what your organization, what it can do for them specifically to assist them with this growth project. Outline what resources you have, what types of programs you can help them to get to where they need to go before you even deep dive into what your region has to offer. And then you get through to that. So maximum engagement is obtained by positioning yourself as a value add to the company's site selection process. You want to show that you're an integral piece and in a sense will make their life easier. So the initial meeting should be conducted, as we said, in a listening mode, and you want to just inquire as much information from that company as possible. What that means is an effective meeting will bring through a thoroughly selected group of people together for specific purposes, and it will provide a forum for open discussion, and there will be tangible results. There will be a decision, a plan, and a list of go-tos afterwards. And that's really what's essential, is sitting down and understanding what the barrier is, how you can help, and having actionable points afterwards so that that follow-up meeting doesn't get kind of lost as it can, and as we've seen, statistically, with a lot of our EDOs that have those first initial conversations. So speaking of the conversations, there's a full methodology that we try to establish for our EDOs when they go in, and that is establishing purpose. So you want to go in and just have a brief introduction, as I said, of the agency, present a clear statement of what your organization can do, how you are, in a sense, a consultant for them, but for free. Essentially, that's what our services are. You're free, and you can help them and act as an advisor and help them mitigate a lot of different tasks. You also want to focus on solving problems from the outset. You don't want to wait later down the line and understand what their barriers are. You want to identify them right at the beginning and brainstorm and have creative ideas from the get to show that you're here to not just push your pitch or your region, but really to be an advisor and a consultant for this company. You want to show that there's a value add to having these conversations with you. Again, active listening, understanding, taking down what are those next steps that you need to prepare for them. And that's where we come into delivering results. And this is where GIS planning and different strategies that we're going to show you really come in, because after you've had that initial meeting, now that the information you relay to them, it has to have data. You want to provide quantitative data after a meeting and show actionable content that will help them understand your community and the regional assets and advantages that you have. And being able to do that depends on the multiple layers of data that you have. So having a great website, understanding what your supply chain is, knowing, your benchmarking your communities to your neighbors or the states or regions that you usually compete with, having all of that ahead of time so that right after the meeting, you can send it to them to paint a picture through data will really put you as a competitive ahead. And this is where Davor, who is as we like to say, data scientist here at Research Consultants, he's going to come in and he's going to really explain to you how we get that data and how do you tell a story with data.
Yes, thank you, Amber. So so the next slide ultimately talks about that measurable data. I normally like to say it's good to have some of this data prior to the meeting and a lot more of that data after the meeting. Ultimately, depending on that meeting that you're going to be taking, that first initial investor meeting, you can sort of assume who your competitors are. And I'm always going to say the same thing, know your region, but also know who your competitors are. So, for example, if you're a Midwest/Michigan-based economic developer and you're meeting with a European automotive part supplier, you can assume that at least prior to this meeting that your competitors are going to be elsewhere in the Midwest, i.e. Ohio, Indiana, perhaps South Carolina, and Georgia. And again, just having some sort of benchmarking and/or measurable data with the competing regions is a crucial step. So again, understanding who your competitors are, and this is not necessarily just for those investor meetings, but also this can help you promote your region and enable you better with your marketing efforts to stand out. So when we talk about, for example, analysis, very often economic development organizations have some sort of strategic plan or a market assessment or some sort of a study that talks about their 3, perhaps 5-year foreign direct investment or direct investment plan. Very often they have a SWOT analysis in there. However, rarely there's a SWOT analysis for their main competitors, which I strongly suggest for you guys to have, especially when you are meeting with your potential investors. In terms of benchmarking, it requires a lot of work. Perhaps some of you have market research or business intelligence teams in-house. If not, obviously there are consultancy firms that do that, but there are also tools. One of them are going to name, not going to promote any tools, but just very quickly, there's, for example, Financial Times has a tool called the FDI Benchmark, which literally, it takes a few minutes to compare a city or a state to another state, and you can compare it by your quality data, you can compare it by your cost data, you can compare it by type of project and all that sort of stuff. Ultimately, the tool has over 1,000 data points, and it can measure up to 20 regions at the same time. So again, why are we mentioning this? We want you to stand out during that meeting. It is to be assumed that you're not the only economic development organization that particular investor is going to be meeting with. We can also assume, as you saw in Amber's slides, that 50% of those potential investors are going to be meeting some sort of site location strategists and consultants and so on and so forth. So again, we just want you to stand out and ultimately create that relationship during that initial meeting. On the next slide, ultimately, when it comes to investor meetings, there's 4 points that we want to discuss, and Amber sort of touched on them. So you really want to dig deeper into that intelligence. So everything that Amber mentioned was your preparation for the meeting. During your investors meeting, now's your time to get all that information that your perhaps your consultancy firm or whoever organized that meeting or yourselves did not get that information. So now you have 45 minutes to an hour to really dig deeper into that intelligence. Normally we can talk about, site location requirements, but ultimately what you also want to understand is what are the company's pain points and what are the drivers, as Amber mentioned. Pain points are a very interesting thing, because very often they're not part of the initial site selection criteria. But as the site selection process moves forward, those pain points can become part of that site selection criteria. So that's one of the things that you can also gather, obviously, during that intelligence phase. Another point is obviously education. So you are trying to educate the company or that potential investor on your region, on your business environment, the culture, the clusters, the advantages, and so on and so forth. And if you can also prepare that information in the form of, comparing that to those competing regions, that would be an additional value add. So illustration is another point. So, providing a financial analysis of particular sites, of what that a project would ultimately look like in your region. So again, there are tools for that, like I mentioned, that can really, click of a button and it can prepare, a 20, 30 slide presentation discussing a particular type of project in a particular region. So ultimately giving a full cost analysis with, employees, operating costs, power, utility, you name it, it can give you all that sort of stuff literally in the click of a button. The last part is the motivation. So explaining the real impact in an illustrated way. So what you are trying to do is you are trying to position yourself as the leading region for that particular project, and you're trying to illustrate it and motivate the company ultimately to land there. And the last part is follow-up strategy. So ultimately, this was the reason why we decided to do this little presentation. I sort of introed this conversation that it takes the same amount of attempts to get that follow-up meeting. And very often, when we do our own meetings or we do feedback meetings with our clients after a roadshow or a trade show or a conference call, whatever the case may be, they typically say, "Oh, it was a great meeting," and 6 months down the road, nothing happened to that meeting. They can't get in touch. So here are some of the actionable items that you should attempt to position during that investor meeting. So you want to have agreements. Agreements meaning what are the next steps? How can I best get in contact with you to follow up? Normally, from what I hear and from what we're seeing also is, economic developers complete that first meeting, and normally it's finalized by saying, "Great, I have enough information. I'm going to follow up with an email." What I propose, or what we propose as a company, and again, this is how we do our own internal meetings when we do in-market representation for our clients. We get that date, we get that time, and we tell them that we're going to do that project prototyping. We're going to deliver a cost and competitive analysis of potential projects, including all the options that we discussed during the initial meeting. So, number one, you're positioning yourselves as a consultant. You've created a relationship, but you also want that relationship to continue. Of course, they're going to be busy, and of course, it's perhaps very difficult to book something that is, 30 or 60 or 90 days in advance, but at least attempt to get on their schedule so that you can present the information instead of sending it in an email. Obviously, inviting companies to visit, so attempting to bring potential investors to visit is always a great way to follow up so they can discover regional assets that are relevant to the project and make connections with other local entities as well as stakeholders. And the last piece is keep record of everything that you've done with that company. So perhaps some of you do not have a CRM system in place, but we strongly suggest that all the information should be in some sort of a CRM or a project management tool. And if you have possibly a way to enroll them in some sort of a marketing automation platform, that would be ideal. The reason why is, I guess, we're all busy and we always forget. So, if you have a tool that's actually delivering data and or content to those investors or potential investors, that's always probably the best way to go. So on our end, that was pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Davor, and thank you very much, Amber. We really appreciate all the things that you gave us to think about here. What I'm going to do then is bring this back over onto our end. And Stevie, I've got a couple things to say, and then I'm going to pass this over to you. And then I see that there are a number of questions. So what we'll do is take those questions at the end, if that's all right. Okay, so let's take a look at what we've got here. So as you've heard from Amber and Davor, all of the work that goes into the planning process when you are embarking on a lead generation campaign, what goes into preparing the materials for this, for the meetings themselves, for follow-up. What we're going to talk about on our end is what happens on the website. So you've been working on lead generation, you're trying to drive people back to be interested in your region, and you want to make sure that if they come to your website and they're doing this kind of research, because they may not necessarily contact you ahead of time if they've started this on their own, or if you're going to be putting the work and investment and time with a lead generation firm, that you make sure you have that data proofed on your website. So some of the things you want to make sure you have ready for them when they come is robust, up-to-date, interactive site selection data, the ability to map businesses and industries across your territory, a searchable commercial sites and buildings database, labor force and talent pool data, because we know how important workforce is for many companies, the ability to analyze and drill into this data. So it really cannot be static data. You need something that businesses looking to make multi-million-dollar decisions want to be able to roll up their sleeves and get their hands dirty with the data to be able to answer the questions that they might be coming there with. And of course, the ability to share and export data. And part of this is actually a lead generation issue. If you're going to be sharing data within your own marketing and putting them either in PowerPoint decks or responses for to RFPs or on social media, however it works out, that these are links that bring them back to your website. You don't want to just give them the information and then lose them. So the sharing and exporting data that brings them back to your website is so critical. And then absolutely contact information. And actually, this is going to bring us to our items 6 through 10 on the 10 things you need to know. And then finally, of course, the analytics to track who is on your website. If you're going to be doing all of this work, you want to make sure that you know who actually comes. So Stevie's going to walk us through this, but briefly, again, sites and buildings, the idea of dynamic data, that data that's easy to analyze, easy to share, and then that trackability piece that you know which companies are on your website, what they're searching, and what they viewed. And the bonus number 11, I know this is a pet peeve. Stevie and I talk about this all the time. Your website should never feel like a scavenger hunt. You never want people to come to your website looking to invest potentially in your region and not be able to find some basic information, including contact information that they're looking for. Unfortunately, all too often, that is the case. So Stevie, I'm going to pass this over to you so that you can walk us through, I guess, overview of what this actually looks like practically.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. It has been such fantastic data or information. It's really, I've learned a lot myself about the lead generation process and more specifically what should happen during those meetings. So thinking you're meeting with, the CEO of a company, you've traveled a long way, you've presented yourself just perfectly, you've taken all of the steps that Davor and Amber have talked about, and then you've left the meeting with a package of information, and the CEO may do their homework on you and they may pass that off to a real estate division part of their company. The important thing is, no matter who is starting to do their research on you and your region and what you could do for their business based on the portfolio that you left them, it all depends on this website. What happens when they get to your website and they start looking around? Are they going to find the part that allows them to find the sites and buildings that meet their criteria, the supporting data to help them with that decision? And then we have some extra additional information that we've recently added, which will really help bring home the message about why your region is important and should be considered as part of their evaluation process. So we're going to spend our time on the Powering Florida website, Florida Power and Light. You can access this. This is live, so if it's a little bit slow to respond, it is because of the GoToMeeting. You'll be able to access this yourself. It's live, it's up, it's running right now. This is our brand new platform, and I'm just going to show you a little bit about some of the points that we talked about and how that that search happens. So I'm in London or I'm in Istanbul, and you've already met with me, and now I want to find an available site or building that meets my criteria. And I'm able to search by city, by county, by region. I can search the state as a whole. I can also search for sites and buildings that meet my criteria just based on a click and a very responsive, very fast-moving site. I can search by size of either square feet or acres, for sale or for lease, and various building types and or land types. These are all very customizable. Every client is different in terms of the different assets that they add, the different property types. So don't think that this is all the application has. There are several to choose from. I can also search by keywords, which is really important because sometimes I'm only searching for maybe properties in an opportunity zone or properties that are in a hub zone or some type of various incentive zone served property. As Alissa mentioned, you have the ability to actually take some of the sites and send them in a link. So we've got different project folders here for our clients to actually save properties. You do not need to register to use the site in order to save the properties. This is available for everyone. Once you've saved properties into folders, those folders, first of all, you're the only one that can see them until you share that folder. So here I have Project Crystal, and so I have 3 different properties here for consideration that I think would be fantastic. And I want to take that folder and I'm going to share that with my company that I'm courting, the end user real estate department. I can simply copy this link. I would rename it, but copy this link and embed this directly in your email. You can email the results by entering the email address here as well as your own and on social media. And once they've clicked this link, they're going to go directly into your site with these properties queried, looking just like what you're seeing it here. And they're going, and it's all live, so they're going to be able to access this information just directly off of that particular link. So they can get in and really do a deep dive in terms of the property information. So let's take a look at this property here in Orlando. Here we have our property details in terms of photos of the property. These applications, again, every client is different, will hold drone imagery, video, multiple photos, so don't feel like you can only have just the one picture. We have a description of the property as well as the property details, and then hyperlinks to just an overview of the city and the county information. We'll take a peek at that here in just a little while. We have property availability, building details, transportation, and you can see that none of the fields in this report that we're looking at yield no information. So essentially, the only information that will be shown are the fields that actually have an answer to them. So you don't have a report that has a lot of blank information. I have contact information, and you can see I have multiple points of contact. And at the very bottom of the page on this particular client, you can see all of the city and counties and regions served, and I can search properties within those specific communities. Let's go up to some of the supporting data. So Florida Power and Light also has MZ data, which is our occupation data. It's going to break down our jobs by occupation. You can see just our list as well as median earnings by occupation. And here's our list of not only the occupations, but we've got our total on the side. And I can even see this in a heat signature. It's so important that you have dynamic data. No one wants to go to a website and see an old PDF that has information that is not sourced and is not current. You might as well take it off and have nothing. It is so important that if you have a PDF of data, that it is current and it is sourced. But the more interactive your data is, the more actual intuitive and specific the end user can get in finding their information. They want to find the information that's right for their company. So this allows them to really drill down to what's important for that particular client. You can see we not only have our occupational data, but we can also see that in heat signature, which is what I just activated. I can modify this for 0 to 60 minutes and 0 to 60 miles from our particular site of interest. Again, this information is provided by MZ. We also have our demographic information. Our demographic and our consumer expenditure information is brought to you by Applied Geographic Solutions, and it's updated 2 times annually. So this is going to be a breakdown of our population, our age distribution, gender, ethnicity, etc. The importance of looking at data is that not everybody absorbs data in the same way. Some may want this report form, others may be more moved by a graph form. They might be able to really see that these are the numbers that they've been looking for. So your user has the ability to actually modify how they're looking at this data to what speaks to them. As you can see at the bottom, I'll try not to make you dizzy. I know that goes quite quickly there. All of our data is sourced with the date and the actual source of that data. Our consumer expenditures looks very similar. It's a breakdown of where the residents in this community is spending their money. So we have a breakdown of, as in the demographic report, we have our 2019 as well as our projected 2024 information. And this is going to give us a breakdown of where our residents are spending our money. And I can modify this by actually zeroing in closer or scrolling out further to get a little bit more of a bird's eye view, because I understand that people are willing to drive 20 miles for the right apparel store, women's apparel store is here what I've selected. Our wage and salary information is brought to you by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, updated annually, and it will break down our mean hourly and median hourly as well as our annual wages by occupation. And again, we have the ability to see this in heat signature. This information is updated annually. We also have our business information. So you've met with the business, they understand, wow, okay, I think I found a couple of buildings that meet my criteria. I want to see what other kind of businesses that you have in your community. And so this is going to be a breakdown of those businesses. This report is brought to you by Info Group, otherwise known as Info USA. It's updated 4 times annually, so we really try and capture that change in your community. And it's going to break down our businesses by actual our 2-digit and our 4-digit and then our 6-digit numbers. So I'm able to see by computer lending, or excuse me, consumer lending, the actual names of the companies that are in an area and the sales and estimated employees. And again, this information can be modified 0 to 60 minutes and 0 to 60 miles. It's updated 4 times a year. What's really new and really exciting, especially for Florida Power and Light, because they're the first to roll this out, is our FDI data. So we're now able to track our FDI investment for 7 years of greenfield data displayed by county, or you can display it by country or by sector. It's all the way down at the city level. And so I can see, as you can see, a breakdown of our investment by country. So if I'm from the UK, I'm able to see that others from the UK have also invested here, which really has it has me intrigued. I'm a software company. I can actually see the names of the other companies who have invested in this community. And this is just within a 10-mile radius. We can always bring our circle out farther to capture more information, and that's how fast that data is updated. It's just updated right on the fly. I can see by number, by not only country, but by number of projects, by jobs, and by investment. I can also look at sector as a whole, because I may be, again, a software IT company, and now I can break it down kind of in another way. Again, it's all how you are able to absorb and look at data. Everybody does it different, and so our tools have the ability, because they're so interactive and responsive, to meet the needs of several different individuals and how they absorb their data. This information, again, it's brought to you by FDI. It's through the Financial Times. And so this is updated, I believe it's updated twice a year, 2 times a year. And again, it's 7 years of greenfield investment in your area. We also provide you talent information. Now that I think, okay, I see that others from my area have invested in this community, I found a business or a building that really just meets my needs. Everything else is just measuring up. I want to make sure that you have the talent graduating from some of the local universities that are going to meet my long-term need. And that's where this talent report comes in. It's going to show on the map where our top learning institutions are within a user-entered radius, as well as our top programs by number of graduates, our top universities by number of graduates, and then below is a breakdown of actual programs and the amount of graduates that are coming out of those programs. So I can see I've got a lot of communication, journalism degrees. I've got several bachelor's degrees in speech communications and rhetoric. And I've clicked this with my mouse just to see where these graduates are coming. So I can see they're coming out of the University of Central Florida, which is located very close to that, that business or that building, excuse me, that I have identified earlier on in my search. We also have the ability to search properties by actual community. I can look at the community information as a whole, or within that community by not only just seeing it on a map so I can more visually see where these communities are located, I can go to find properties and find properties directly within that community. The importance of this is that a business that is in the UK or in Istanbul or some of the other places that I know lead gen programs are very popular and happen, is they don't understand sometimes where our states are, let alone where the communities within our states are. So as visual as we can get that will really help create a picture in their heads of where you're located and what then is available. Alissa had mentioned something very important. Now that we know that we have all of the different factors of finding a site or building. So you have the sites and buildings, you have the dynamic data piece. It's easy to analyze, and we'll analyze differently for the way different minds works. It's easy to share because we can share this information in multiple formats. But how do you know if they're actually looking at your community? And that's where your analytics come in. So I've got two photos here of an analytic report that we offer. We call it Lead Gen ID, and this will actually tell you the name of the company on your website, how many times they visited, and what they've done on each visit. It gives you their company, their main company location, as well as a URL and website information, and then for every visit that they've made, it's going to give you a breakdown of each click that they've made on a GIS planning provided tool. So I can see that they're on our website, they've looked at my contact information, they've looked at some of our products. This will actually get down and show you which properties they looked at, the range of property they looked at. So for example, they're looking at 5,000 to 10,000 square feet of Class A office space. It will provide you all of those clicks and all of those search requirements within this report. We never recommend that a client actually then get on the phone and start calling and let them know, hey, I know you were on my website and you were looking for X, because it creeps everybody out. What you really want to do is, you know that they're looking. It's a great time to wait a week or two and then reach out and let them know that you may have a couple of properties that really would be perfect for this company. And even though you know that they were looking, you might have a couple of properties that were perfect for this company, and you'd love the ability to bring them to your community and maybe show them these properties in real time. Alissa, with that, I think I'm going to go ahead and give it back to you and the group. I'm sure we have a lot of questions, and that will allow plenty of time for questions on either the lead gen program or what to provide on your website.
Perfect, excellent. So yeah, we do have a number of questions actually that have come up. Let's start off at the top. For Amber and Davor, they wanted to know if you could repeat the tools that you use to gather information on various companies.
Yeah, gladly. So obviously, being in the lead gen business, we're subscribed to many tools. So my favorite tool is probably Capital IQ. It's a Standard & Poor product. They've been in business for 100-something years. So Capital IQ, and/or it's called S&P Global Market Intelligence. It's the same tool. It provides information on public as well as private companies, but just the amount of, I guess you could say, filters and sub-filters and information that you can get on a company level is, you cannot compare it to anything else. So you can see that tool in a free mode on Bloomberg, if you will. So if you Google, let's say, a company name and you add Bloomberg next to it, so that's ultimately what it looks like. Other tools that we use to find information on companies are Hoover's, which is a Dun & Bradstreet product. very, very similar to Capital IQ. It's just not as comprehensive as Capital IQ. They also have Evention, which is very, very similar to Hoover's. We also use IBIS World, which is your, I guess you could say, industry slash product reports. They're done on an annual basis, and they give projections on a particular NAICS code's growth over the next 3 to 5 years. Other tools that we use are obviously LinkedIn when we prepare some sort of a contact report, and all sorts of secondary research for contacts.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Some great tools, and it's helpful to have that list. Tracy wants to know, what are some benchmarks to look at? Well,
meaning, okay, well, I can sort of explain it just very quickly. So, you know, when you do a benchmark, there's two aspects that benchmarks look at. You know, one of them is your quality data, which has, you know, in some tools, they have about 800 or 900 different data points. And another one would be your cost data. So when you do your benchmark, you always compare that quality aspect, and that could be, you know, your talent pool, your education, number of universities, number of MBA schools ranked top 100 worldwide. Like, really, the data is really comprehensive, and you can really click pretty much whatever you want. And then you also have your cost. So your cost could be, you know, your wages, your property cost, your utility cost, and all that sort of stuff. So whenever you do a benchmark, there's two sides of data that you're comparing. Again, those are the quality and your cost. Normally also when you do benchmarking reports, if you're generally just comparing yourself to a particular community, then you can use some and or all data points. But again, when you're doing a project type specific benchmarking, i.e., you know, regional headquarters or manufacturing facility for the automotive sector, then there's a pre-created or pre-made set of those data points, which is, you know, depending on the project, but I would say that it's anywhere between 150 to 300 different data points that are observed for particular project types.
Excellent. Okay, thank you for that. And someone wanted to know, what was the website where you can compare city data, the Financial Times tool?
What is the web?
I think they were asking about, I believe it was where you were referring to the FDI benchmark tool. Is that where we're comparing city data?
Exactly, yeah.
Excellent, okay. Let's see, we've got a few other questions. Just a reminder for everyone that there is a questions field in the GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. Please put your questions in there. We'll be happy to take a look at them. So with the new dynamics in world trade, China, US, trade war, Brexit, etc., should EDOs rethink which countries they should target and which countries to avoid?
Absolutely. Is that a question for me?
I think that's a big question. We could do a whole webinar, I suppose, just on that.
You can do a whole webinar on that, but what I'm going to just briefly answer is, I think that there's actually, well, there's two things. One of them is UNCTAD just published their 2019 investment report that talks about particularly about foreign direct investments and ultimately what's happening. And then I believe a day later, McKinsey came out with their own report that's sort of explaining the data provided by the World Investment Report. Yes, there are discussions about you know, tariffs and trade. Trade is increasing in terms of, at least this is how McKinsey explained it. Trade is definitely increasing, and it's outnumbering obviously number of FDI project. So also technologies play a huge role in that, because obviously software and IT services are taking over when it comes to foreign direct investments. And in that regard, obviously, when you're a software company, you do not necessarily have to have presence in a different market. You can supply it, quote unquote, virtually from your domestic destination. So there's a lot of movement when it comes to foreign direct investments. However, there's still a massive opportunity to attract them. So to answer your question, I think that if many of organizations haven't done so, I would definitely plan on revising your FDI strategy, hiring a consultancy that can help you out with that.
Okay, thank you. And Stevie, I guess this is a question for you. Can city profiles on the FPL Powering Florida website be embedded on local economic development websites?
No, you can, let me see, you can, I believe you can download them, but you can't embed them. You can license them individually for your community for very, very little money. And it's so we can actually give you the code so you can properly embed that within your website.
Okay, and then we have a question, I guess, for both companies on how does cost work? So for RCI, is there like a specific structure per meeting, per lead, or for an overall plan? And then I guess for small community, for GIS planning, how does that work versus a large community?
Davor, I'll let you go first.
Okay, great, thank you. Yeah, I can speak to research consultants for us. So we have many varied programs for lead generation, and they're all very flexible, and it really comes down to the criteria that we set ahead of time. And pricing and scopes depends on the length of a project, the markets we're trying to go to. Is it full service, i.e. will we be doing in-market representation for you, or will we just be uncovering the leads? What is the level of investment criteria per lead that you're looking for? So there are a lot of factors. So if anyone's really interested in getting kind of a more detailed overview of that, we would definitely set up a free consultation and understand what it is that you need, what your community is looking for, and then be able to show you what that program would look like.
Great. Okay, thank you. And I believe this takes us to the end of our questions today. Amber, Davor, Stevie, any last thoughts that you want to leave us with?
For us, I think oh, go ahead. Go.
No, go ahead, Stevie. It's fine. No, sorry.
Thank you. Oh, no. I think for us, it's we understand that there's so much information here on not only the lead generation side, but then just about your website side, that it really is worth calling and getting more very personal information about your community. Every program I know is different, every website is different, and so for us on the GIS planning side, we can evaluate what you have already on your website. I've been in this industry for 20 years. I've run my own organization. I've been a client of GIS planning, and now, of course, working for them. So we have a lot of knowledge. Tap into the knowledge that each one of us brings and find out what works best for your community so we can custom tailor something for you. Our contact information is up there, and it helps us to be able to have a conversation with you rather than just reading a question. We can actually hear you and kind of have that actual conversation back and forth.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you all very much for your time, and thank you all for joining us here today for this webinar. You will hear from us in the next 24 hours with a link to this video, and you will have the contact information for everyone included in that email. So feel free to pass that on or share with colleagues or get in touch for further questions. Amber, Davor, Stevie, thank you all very much for your time, and have a great afternoon.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Likewise. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.